Is Cardfight Vanguard dying? The short answer is probably not. But we are in very, very rocky waters. So lately, we have seen on groups like Vanguardians, people going, oh, game's dead, oh, game sucks, game's gonna quit any moment now, I'm going to Digimon, Digimon rules, it's the next big thing, it's gonna destroy all the other card games because the IP is so big, you know, we all grew up playing Digimon and so it's just gonna take over the world and Vanguard is dead. And now if you wanna play Digimon, go ahead. If the game's fun, enjoy. Nothing against that at all. But you know, that overall very aggressive fighting we've been seeing on those forums and has made people very scared. And so I figured I'd give my thoughts on that. Now this video will be very, very context driven because it's very hard to give you an opinion without also giving the entire history of the trading card market. Be very aware. When it comes to trading cards, there is the big three. There's Magic, Yu-Gi-Oh!, Pokemon. All the other card games that came after or came around the same time but then died are almost irrelevant in comparison. When you look at sales numbers, tournament attendance, basically every metric out there, you have the big three and everything else is 20 miles under it. I don't care if you're talking about Flesh and Blood, or Force of Will, which is now dead, Wise Schwartz, Buddy Fight, Vanguard, Dragon Ball Super, and even the upcoming Digimon. It's the top three, and then 20 miles under there you have like, hey look, there's some card games there as well. So that's important context. Now, if you look at the actual numbers, you have those three, then you have a few miles down, and then in number 4 is Vanguard. This has been the case for quite a while. If you look at the data, they say like, oh, number 4 is Warhammer or one of those things, or Dungeons and Dragons, I forgot, but that's not a card game, but it's still part of that niche industry, so that's why it's number 4. But so the 4th card game is Vanguard, and has been for a while. And then 20,000 miles under that 4th spot, so be aware, we're already a couple miles down from Yu-Gi-Oh!, Pokemon, MTG, then you reach Vanguard, and then 20,000 other miles down there, you're like, wait, there's more card games? Yeah, there are. Crazy stuff, right? You have new card games entering the market every few years. Every single time when they are announced, everyone thinks, well, this will be the next big thing. But if we're being honest, they're not even touching the top 3. They're not even in the same sentence. And you always have a really big spurt of hype when they are announced. Force of Will, people were legitimately saying, this will kill Magic. This will be the Magic killer. Whoa, Digimon now, this will kill this. Seriously, the odds of survival as a card game, longer term, is so low. You have to be out of your mind to assume that any new card game is gonna touch the big 3, let alone survive for more than 5 years. Now you could say, oh, but I know of a card game that survived more than 5 years. Sorry, but if you know 10 players in your state, that's not surviving, you know, that's just limping along. I'm looking at you, Dragon Ball Super and Naruto and so forth. Wise Schwartz, maybe. I know Wise is like really big for some people, but then very often they play the Japanese game, so in Japan it's doing well. But if I look at BCS attendance for Wise, it's laughable. And that's not me shitting on the game. I'm sure the game is fine. I have friends who are really good at it and are into it. But when we are talking about cultural relevance, the game just barely exists. So why do I say this? Well, despite all those odds, despite so many games continuously coming onto the scene, and suddenly on their first events they have hundreds of people, and oh, this is gonna be the next big thing, oh, there's so much hype, well, look, in my locals I saw 20 players and it's only the first set. You saw 20 players or 40 players because it's the first set. And every single time the game has that hype, and then the company messes up, or people just get bored because the new little plaything, the people who are going for that little plaything, after a point it's no longer new, and it's no longer little, and it's no longer a plaything. Now that doesn't mean this will happen to Digimon. Maybe against all odds, this is the next new game, and that's fine. Again, I don't really care. But be aware, if you're just looking at data and Bandai's track record, but let's not get into that, the likelihood of failure is far bigger than the likelihood of success, even though the beginning is very hyped. Again, look at Force of Will. That game had more hype than this one right now. Look at all the fucking videos from 2016. It was crazy. We had Argent Saga, same shit. Every single time there's some new thing. Now I mention that because despite the fact that no card game has ever touched the top 3 Again, MTG, Pokemon, Yu-Gi-Oh! Those are the top 3. All the rest of us, we are down there. Down, a few miles down. And the top 3 is like, whoa, there's another card game? You think they'll take market share? The only game that has stood the test of time, to a certain extent, is Vanguard. Almost 10 years by now. That is a very, very big deal. That is very hard to do. There's hundreds of games that have tried to do that and failed. So be very aware of that. You know, Vanguard has a history of having rocky moments. Legion was a rocky moment. The first reboot was a very rocky moment, but that doesn't mean the game is dead. But again, maybe it will be. I don't know. But betting on the fact that a new card game is gonna take over the world, when we've seen that play out time and time again and not play out time and time again, I don't know about that. Beyond that, also be aware that communities tend to say something is dying very, very quickly, very, very often. World of Warcraft has basically been dying the last 12 years. So just know, like, people like to say, oh, this is dying, when in actuality it's just maybe going through a rougher patch, or maybe it is dying, who knows? League of Legends has been dying for a decade, Hearthstone has been dying for years, Yu-Gi-Oh! Has been dying for years, despite continuously breaking all of its attendance records, unless of course we're into COVID. So people like to call things that they are dying without them actually dying at the moment. With that being said, as I mentioned earlier, Vanguard is in rocky water right now. Anyone claiming that it isn't is out of their goddamn mind. Standard has never been this shit. And you'll know if you watch this channel, Standard has very often been shit. But this shit is a new low. Premium is barely getting support in Japan, but plenty of players in the West still want to play it, so we'll see how that plays out. We don't really have events, so it's hard to judge as well. Even in Japan, we don't know what will happen once the whole COVID thing is over, you know. It seems they have it kind of under control, but they're still not going all out. So it's very tough to call things there. Beyond that, we have Overdress looming, and Bushiroad once again giving zero communication about it. They have shown us no product beyond the clan selections, and the clan selection really looks like that final buddy fight set. So it's very possible that they are staying quiet because they're gonna announce something that people are not gonna like a rotation or something like I have said before, and that they are on purpose not saying anything so people keep buying product, and then who knows what the next announcement does. So again, we are in times of uncertainty, rocky waters, things are shit, and claiming otherwise is quite frankly just lying. Now why is that? In my opinion, Reboot 1 was the beginning of all problems. And when the Reboot 1 was announced, I was very vocal. Like, I don't like this. I want to really support Premium. I care about eternal formats. Because there's a bunch of fucking issues that you open up. When you let a company say, well, from now on, some cards are no longer allowed. This is basically rotation, but we won't call it that. We're not gonna call it rotation. No, it's something entirely different. It's a new era. When you let a company get away with that, they know, wow, we can basically force everyone to rebuy entire collections once every few years because they clearly ate it up this first time. Ooh, this is exciting. We're gonna get some short-term extra profits, and you know, the shareholders will really like that, you know. Instead of someone just having to buy a few cards once every few sets to keep their deck updated, now they'll have to buy everything whenever we release a new rotation. No, it's not a rotation. We only did it once, guys. That doesn't mean it's rotating. We just rebooted once so far. When you open that type of floodgate, you are telling a company, you know what? I like my ass being ripped open by you. And people thought, oh, but this is their way of having a clean slate. And now they're not gonna bring all the issues that G had. Now they're really gonna do their best and are really gonna make sure that they never make the same mistakes again. And then of course, as I also said, they made all the same mistakes. Because when you are designing a card game, it's very hard not to make them. It's just how card games are. People who thought that their decks would be cheaper? No, of course not. You still needed the same amount of rare cards per deck. Supply and demand would automatically even it out to a point where your decks would be exactly the same price once again, even though there were less cards in it. But you know, if you want a history lesson, you can go check out all those videos as well. Now, this is not a standard versus premium video. If you want my thoughts on that, I've given them to you before plenty. But it's more so from a game design company perspective. A game needs, in my opinion, an eternal format just to keep existing. We can look at the big three and now you can say, oh, but Pokemon is a rotating game. Yeah, they have expanded, but no one cares about expanded. But here's the thing. Pokemon is carried by toddlers going to Walmart, opening product, and looking at the shiny Pikachu. Pokemon is not being carried because of its competitive game. That is straight BS. Both MTG and Yu-Gi-Oh! Ass blast Pokemon's competitive scene consistently. Its competitive scene only exists because Pokemon as a franchise is so big that people have nostalgia towards it, and the competitive game just kind of exists. And as long as Pokemon just keeps on printing some Charizards and Pikachus, collectors and kids will keep on buying the product. So Pokemon existing while mostly leaning on a rotating format is not a good example. It's a collector's card game first, and a competitive card game second or third or fourth or sixth. So then we look at the other two of the big three. You have MTG and you have Yu-Gi-Oh! Yu-Gi-Oh! Clear. It's just an entire eternal format. It does have Speed Duel and Rush Duel, which is at least Rush Duel in Japan, which is a great way to keep new players engaged because you can give them Speed Duel decks and go, look, this is much easier. You don't have to get into the daunting, super competitive stuff. And honestly, to me, that is what Standard should have been. A really easy way to introduce people to the game without attempting to be, and failing, to be a competitive juggernaut of the game. So Yu-Gi-Oh! Is just a big eternal format. And it has done extremely well because of that. Because you know, I buy Yu-Gi-Oh! Cards, and sure, there may be bans, but the majority of my cards will remain useful in some way. Whether it's in low tiers, that's fine, but you are never being told, throw your cards away, can't do anything with them anymore, lamao. That just doesn't exist. You get to keep playing. You can crack open your Shadol deck from fucking how many years ago and add a few cards and you have a playable deck once again. You can quit, come back a decade later, find out, oh, my Lightstorms, yeah, they're not top tier anymore, obviously, but wait, what? They're still like decent if you throw in some cards and you can do stuff? That's crazy. Yeah, that is crazy. That makes it so anyone at any point can come back into the game and know I can still play given a few changes. So Yu-Gi-Oh! Eternal as fuck, very easy to get back into. Then you get into MTG. Now you could say MTG, its primary competitive format is Standard. Absolutely. However, its biggest player base is not Standard. MTG, as a long-term game, is built on the fact that it has long-term formats. It has Modern, it has Pioneer, it has, well, Vintage and Legacy, kind of. And then the biggest one is EDH, or otherwise known as Commander. You can buy a Commander deck in 2010, come back to Magic right now, throw in a few more cards, and still have fun with your game at the local game store. That is extremely powerful. That is so easy to get someone back into the game. If you have a Magic the Gathering Standard deck from 2010, too fucking bad, buddy. You can just trash that, maybe throw it to a vendor, maybe he'll give you $5 or a Coca-Cola. But you have an EDH deck from back then? Cool, come sit at the table and enjoy. That is the kind of stuff you need to have a long-term powerful game. You don't want to tell your loyal players to shut the fuck up and buy new collections all the time and throw away all their cards. You need the eternal format as the basis for your long-term growth and health. That is the only way to have incentive to even stay in a game. Can you imagine if you started playing Vanguard in V era? You were like listening to some of the toxic players going, don't play premium, it's too toxic, it's only itchy Tom and Geese. Remember that? And so you just bought some standard decks and some standard decks, and now, suddenly with Overdress they go, huh, hello people, remember that reboot a few years ago? We're doing another one. What happens? Well, there's a new flashy game. It's called Digimon. Wow. And I have this collection. It's now just a pile of worthless trash. And there's a new exciting game in town. My friend told me, this game is gonna be great. It's gonna be bigger than the big three even. It's gonna stand the test of time. Well, I've got this trash heap, bye, and they go to the new game. That is what you get when you build a game on the short-term, quick, buy our packs. Guys, buy our packs. Instead of the long-term, eternal formats with your loyal player base. But again, even if they don't rotate, because again, they never said they would, you have already instilled that fear into the players. You have already told them, we did it before and we might do it again. So that level of uncertainty has made it so people feel way more easy to just jump ship. If a player has a collection in a game that retains some level of value or playability, as a company you are actually just long-term holding them hostage which is exactly what you should be doing if you want long-term growth or long-term stability. If you're continuously just throwing new shit at them and then you notice, damn, they're not buying the new shit, you know what? Your old shit, it doesn't work anymore. After a while, players are just gonna say, fuck you, I'm out. There's a lot of things you can blame Bushiroad for. You can say you shouldn't be power creeping standard like this insane amount. They've kind of been doing it, honestly, for 2 years now, but no one wanted to talk about it until it, well, essentially got to a point where everything now is stronger than everything in G. Like, a year ago, a V deck could already ass blast a G deck, purely based on the higher shield and higher trigger powers and all of that. That's already power creep. But now, it can ass blast a G deck even if you made up the difference in trigger power and so forth. Purely because all of the VRs of the past months are better than all the strides, except for the premium collection ones and maybe a few outliers like a Hellheart 8 or something like that. Think about that. There's people bitching about how End of G was so toxic and so overpowered, and then being totally fine with the fact that all of the VRs right now literally spit on End of G cards. You have your Dragabyss Luard, was it in GBT 14 or something like that? Really strong stride, right? Whoa, so powerful. Really made Luard, not tier 1, maybe like tier 1.5 or whatever you want to call it. That's a strong card, right? Well, if you look at Luard in V, it's literally 20 times better. If I had to choose between striding old Luard strides or riding the new VRs in Luard, I'd pick the VRs. I'd win every fucking game against that heap of trash from 3 years ago. So that power creep has just been a thing for like the past 24 months and was barely discussable until it reached this peak moment. But it's really been happening all along. You can also blame them for a lack of communication. In my opinion, whenever we saw, especially early on in the reboot, people went like, yeah, but they don't even plan on supporting premium. They're not even gonna make premium cards anymore. Yeah, Bushiroad said that. Yeah, my uncle at Bushiroad, they said this. That constant fear and made up BS, people pushing to promote one side or the other, Bushiroad could have easily said, guys, you're lying. We clearly state that XYZ. Bushiroad should have had clear communication from the very start about their plans with each format. If Standard was going to rotate, it should have been communicated 3 years ago. If Premium was planned to be a long-term thing, which it clearly was, by the way, but people kept making shit up because no one understands Japanese in the West, Bushiroad SEA should have clearly said, guys, you may not have realized this, but on stream, we said A, B, C. We've seen some questions and here are the answers. Premium will stay supported, your collection will not be invalidated, XYZ and so forth. They should have never left all of this FUD, you know, fear and uncertainty. They should have never let that spread. In either format, neither standard or premium, there should have just been clear communication. It's not hard to hire one intern to make some videos and answer questions. Now, I'm well aware that a lot of people will not like what I'm saying here. A lot of people will dislike and get mad, and that's fine. I quite frankly don't care. But so yeah, my final thoughts. We're in rocky waters, but with every era shift, you always have people quitting and joining. That's just how it is. Legion, G, Reboot 1, it's always the same shit. The most important thing is that a company looks at its long term over its short term. Because if you don't, you just end up like a Force of Will, a Naruto trading card game, a Final Fantasy, a Buddy Fight, Digimon's past 420.69 iterations, and basically all of the other trading card games that have utterly failed, except for the top 3. I, for one, am looking forward to Overdress. If it doesn't rotate, cool, but I wonder how the fuck you're gonna fix Standard then. If it does rotate, cool, okay, then Standard will be fixable, you know. On the other hand, maybe new players will enter Premium because they're like, wow, I don't want all my cards to be worthless trash. And if they don't, if they then just go, oh yeah, I want the new cards and fuck that Premium stuff, yeah, I'll just keep on buying. Please, give me all the new cards and I'll forget about everything else. Well, yeah, then Vanguard's fucking doomed.